It's been 2 months now since the US president first mentioned the prospect of Canada becoming the 51st state. At the time, pretty much everyone agreed he was probably just trolling, but he kept going, bringing it up over and over and over, even going so far as to suggest a possible plan of attack.
Are you also considering military force to annex and acquire Canada?
No. Economic force.
Then Canada's Prime Minister weighed in at a meeting with business leaders in Toronto.
Justin Trudeau's remarks in the closed-door session of the meeting were picked up on a live microphone, suggesting that Donald Trump's frequent comments about Canada becoming the 51st state are not meant in jest.
Fox News then asked Trump about Trudeau's comments directly.
You know, the Prime Minister said this weekend to a group of Canadian businessmen, he was at a private meeting, he said that your wish for Canada to be the 51st state is a, quote, real thing. Is it a real thing?
Yeah, it is. I think Canada would be much better off being a 51st state.
Which all raises the question, if Trump really does want to absorb Canada, why? Well, some Canadian politicians, including Justin Trudeau, say much of what Trump may want from Canada is underground.
He believes the president is motivated by his desire to tap into this country's natural resources and critical minerals.
He wants our natural resources, our critical minerals.
Lithium, like graphite, like rare earth. We have the chance to have all these minerals, and I think Mr. Trump would like to get them.
When they talk about a minerals deal with Ukraine, or they talk about whatever it is they want to do with Greenland, or these sort of allusions towards Canada annexation, we have seen a general through line, which is critical minerals.
Critical minerals are those building blocks of technology which countries deem essential to their economies and national security. You can think metals used for aerospace, defense, energy, for example. Critical minerals don't generally have easy alternatives either, and they tend to be in short supply.
They're not easy to find elsewhere, and yet they're really, really necessary.
Necessary and used in everything. Like, say you wake up in the morning to the sound of your battery-operated alarm clock. Those batteries, full of lithium. You walk over to the fridge, you grab some breakfast. That fridge is energy efficient, so its wiring is all copper. Then you grab your phone, you put on a podcast to listen to while you eat. Inside that phone, there's a little motor that makes its speakers work. That's full of rare earth elements. And when you're done, you hop on the streetcar heading to work. The massive battery that gives it power has lithium, nickel, and cobalt inside. All those minerals I just mentioned, critical.
All of these are critical for modern technology, whether that's military technology or electric vehicles or data centers to power, the artificial intelligence boom.
How we produce our semiconductors, our fiber optics, our solar cells, they cross all kinds of different industries.
And right now, the US produces nowhere near enough to meet its needs. It imports about 80% of its critical minerals from other countries, and the majority of that comes from one specific country. For every single one of the minerals we're talking about, China has a dominating position over the entire supply chain.
So even though the U.S. is, considers China a big global adversary, they still have to rely on them for, a lot of these critical minerals: nickel, copper, cobalt, lithium, so on and so forth.
So we see concentration is very high, very problematic. It gives one country outsized leverage in controlling the supply chain.
And China uses this leverage. In response to US tariffs, they banned and restricted exports of certain critical minerals to the US.
There are already strong signals being sent across the Pacific Ocean that point to the potential for geopolitical risk that is forming.
And what worries the United States is that there's nothing stopping China from escalating even further, from unilaterally cutting off all of its supply to certain countries. And that's something they have done in the past. In 2010, for example, China completely cut Japan off, banning the shipment of critical minerals. Things did go back to normal a few months later, but it was enough to throw much of the Western world into a panic.
It's really meant as a warning shot. It basically demonstrates strengths at this point that yes, we control the supply chain, yes, we can use it, and yes, we will use it if it's in our interest. And so that is a message that has been understood ever since.
Well, look at our cars a little while back when there was a geopolitical issue and we could not get semiconductors onto this continent. Wait a minute. Everything runs on semiconductors. You don't see them again. They're built into all these machines we use. So is there a risk? Absolutely.
And so this begins to explain why the US is considering its options and why Donald Trump could look north. According to Natural Resources Canada, this country has access to 34 different types of critical minerals. And critical mineral mines, smelters, and refineries are located in every single Canadian province and territory.
Canada is quite fortunate. Canada has been the miners and metallurgists of the world for decades.
But there's a smaller set of minerals the government lists as particularly important, necessary for what they call priority supply chains. We're talking about lithium, graphite, nickel, cobalt, copper, and rare earths. Right now, Canada produces significantly more of all of these minerals than the US does. For example, Canada is currently one of the biggest suppliers of nickel to the US, which is used in nuclear reactors, hydrogen fuel cells, semiconductors, and anything in the aerospace industry that needs to survive at very high temperatures. Canada also supplies a growing amount of cobalt, which in radioactive form is used in many modern technologies, including cancer treatments. There's copper, which is the most efficient way to wire pretty much anything, and much of the lithium Tesla uses for its EV batteries. They come from this mine in Quebec.
Canada does have materials that are not so easy to come by in the United States.
And I could keep going. Canada is also the global leader in the production of potash, a critical mineral used in the production of fertilizer, with Saskatchewan responsible for more than 30% of the world's supply and more than 80% of the US's. Now, to be clear, Canada and China don't compare. China produces much more of what the US needs, and it's not even close. But Canada has potential.
On the very simple pretense that we are a lot bigger than the US. There is more area to access minerals.
We have a lot of everything, and it is actually quite literally spread coast to coast to coast.
The opportunity for Canada is, how do we extract it? How do we process it efficiently and effectively?
And I'll give you an example of one of these opportunities. Tungsten. It's rare, it's dense, it's incredibly tough. You can turn it into bomb casings and warheads strong enough to smash through a tank. You can make body armor, guns out of it. Right now, more than 80% of the world's tungsten is produced and processed in China. But China has stopped shipping it to the US. Canada, though, this part of Canada's north is considered one of the largest tungsten deposits in the world, and work is underway right now to access it, thanks to a huge chunk of money from the US government.
If you look at production in terms of providing access to these minerals to our friends and allies, we could be a very important player.
So, does the US want Canada's critical minerals? Absolutely. The question is, how far is Trump willing to go to obtain them, especially in a world where he may have fewer and fewer alternatives?